Wait a second. Is speak to really a phrasal verb in English? Aren't phrasal verbs supposed to be idiomatic in their meaning? And if someone says, you should speak to Laura about this, how is that idiomatic? Those are great questions. They're very observant questions. And the answer is in a sentence like, you should speak to Laura about that, or Daniela is speaking to customer service right now. The words speak to are not phrasal verbs at all. There's nothing idiomatic about those words in those two sentences. Instead, they're simply using the verb speak with the preposition to indicate that someone is speaking directly to another person or entity. But what about, this painting really speaks to me? Or, your hard work speaks to your overall determination to succeed. The chaos in this office right now speaks to the need to make some changes in our workflow. I'd like to speak to this issue. Of course, paintings, hard work, and chaos don't speak. They can't talk. And I can't speak to an issue the way that I can speak directly to a person or a person representing an organization or department. So in these examples, the verb speak combined with the preposition to is a phrasal verb. It is idiomatic in its meaning. But what exactly does the phrasal verb mean in the context of those sentences? In this Confident English lesson today, we're going to look at this one phrasal verb and 4 different uses or meanings this phrasal verb can have, including personal connections or feelings we might have toward an object or something. It can also be used to highlight a fact or reveal a truth. It might also indicate a connection or a relationship between two things. But before we get there, if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm Anne-Marie, an English confidence and fluency coach. Everything I do is designed to help you get the confidence you want for your life and work in English. If you'd love to get more free resources and lessons from me, you can find years of my Confident English lessons at my Speak Confident English website. While you're there, you can also download my in-depth 2-part How to Say What You Want in English training. In that training, I highlight one simple strategy you can use for fluency and confidence building. Now, let's get right to use number 1 of speak to as a phrasal verb. The first use is to address a specific issue or topic. For example, you might ask someone, could you speak to how the conference benefits from transitioning to an online platform? In this question, you're asking someone to address or talk about a particular issue. In a business meeting, you might say, I'd like to speak to the expected timeliness to implement these changes. Or Sheila wants to speak to the concerns parents expressed about last week's school event. In each of these examples, someone is addressing, acknowledging, or discussing a specific issue. Let's take a step back and look at a bigger scenario to see how we might use this phrasal verb. Imagine you're the one setting the agenda for an upcoming neighborhood or community meeting, and safety is on your mind. In sharing that agenda, you might say, in our next meeting, I'd like to speak to the matter of updating our neighborhood safety measures. I want you to look again at the example sentences that I've provided. In each case, there's a specific structure that we're following. When speak to is used in this way, it is immediately followed by the specific topic or subject that someone wants to address. To speak to how something benefits, to speak to expected timeliness, to speak to concerns or safety measures. Think for a moment about a challenging situation you might be experiencing at work or with a group that you're volunteering for. And imagine that in a future meeting, you want to address this particular topic. In doing that, the structure of your sentence would look like this. I would like to speak to and then the specific topic, concern, or subject. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, what exactly is the difference between to speak to a topic and to talk about a topic? For example, I would like to speak to the expected timeliness for implementing these changes, or I would like to talk about the expected timeliness for implementing these changes. On the surface, there's really no difference between these two sentences. Someone could use one or the other, and there's very little difference in meaning. However, there are two subtle distinctions. Number one, the verb speak, or in this case, speak to, is considered more formal than the verb talk or talk about. As a result, you're more likely to hear the word speak or the phrasal verb speak to in this context in a business meeting, a presentation, a formal debate, or any discussion that is more diplomatic. The second subtle distinction is that when speak to is used in this context, it means that you're going to address this one and only issue. You're going to address timeliness or safety concerns. When we use the phrasal verb to talk about something, it has a sense that it's a much broader conversation. Not only will you address that one particular topic, but there might be multiple related issues that are going to come up in the conversation as well. Again, these aren't huge differences, but there are some subtle changes in meaning. The second use of speak to as a phrasal verb is to express some kind of personal connection that you have with something, some personal, meaningful experience. It might also indicate a special meaning or level of importance you associate with something. And when we use the phrasal verb speak to in this way, it's immediately followed by the subject, object, or idea to which you feel a personal connection. For example, the song's lyrics spoke to me after the breakup. This painting speaks to my love for the natural environment in this area. The book Quiet by Susan Cain really spoke to me. I felt like she wrote it just for me. In each one of those sentences, we're indicating that we have some special bond or connection with that thing or idea. Imagine, for example, that you're part of a book club, and in your next book club meeting, everyone's sharing their thoughts about the book. In that conversation, you might say, "The author's message about family strongly speaks to my own beliefs about familial relationships." The third use of this phrasal verb speak to is to unveil or indicate truths. This is particularly true when we're referring to someone's efforts or actions. For example, your hard work speaks to your deep commitment to our mission. Or, as in the example I shared earlier, the chaos in this office speaks to the need that we need to make some changes in our workflow. In the first example here, we're highlighting that someone's hard work indicates that they are truly committed to the mission of a company. And in the second, the chaos happening indicates a need for change, or it unveils an uncomfortable truth that things aren't going the way they should be going. You'll find that this particular use of the phrasal verb speak to is often used when giving feedback. Imagine, for example, that you're giving feedback to a team member. In that conversation, you might say, "Your consistent effort speaks to your determination and motivation." Before we move on to the fourth use, I want to review a few more examples of how we use the phrasal verb speak to in this context of unveiling a truth or indicating some sort of truth or fact. Number one, the empty streets and low traffic speak to the overall decline of small businesses in this part of the city. Number two, the recent rise in car thefts speaks to the need for increased surveillance in the neighborhood. And number three, the feedback I receive from women speaks to the desire for women-only programs and communities. And now use number four of the phrasal verb speak to, we use it to indicate that one thing relates to another or one thing does not relate to another. For example, if you watch an interview with a journalist on TV, you might hear something like, that information or that answer doesn't speak to the issue at hand. In other words, someone is not answering the question. One thing doesn't relate to the other. Another example, recent events speak to the dip or the decline in the stock market. To fully understand this use, let's look at two specific scenarios and think through how we would respond in that situation using this phrasal verb. In this first scenario, I want you to imagine the marketing team has just pitched a campaign for a new service that your team is launching. And you find the campaign to be vague and confusing. And when asked to share your thoughts, you might say, I don't think this campaign speaks to our clients' concerns or why they might need this service. And now for our final scenario, I want you to imagine you're at a parent-teacher meeting for your child. And in that discussion, your child's teacher might talk about an upcoming test. And then she might say, your child's results will speak to her candidacy for the new science program opening at the school. Now that you have these four clear ways in which the verb speak combined with to is indeed a phrasal verb with idiomatic meaning, I want you to practice. In this practice, I have 3 different scenarios with questions that I want to put to you. I want you to think about them carefully, take some time to reflect on them, and try to create 1 or 2 sentences you might use to respond in this scenario using the phrasal verb speak to. After I share these 3 scenarios, I will also share with you some example sentences that I might use if I were going to respond. Now, after you've created your own sentences, whether it's today, tomorrow, or next week, you can always share them with me. The best place to do that is in the comments directly below this video. So, scenario number 1, talk about your hobby. Why do you enjoy it? Scenario 2, share what contributes to the strength of your relationship with your best friend. And scenario number 3, I want you to imagine that you're going to a meeting. It might be a work-related meeting, perhaps it's with a volunteer organization, or with a teacher where your child goes to school. How would you address a specific concern you have? Here are my examples of how I might answer those questions. The first one, about my hobby and why I enjoy it. When I paint, it's like each brush stroke and each unexpected color combination is an extension of who I am. It speaks to my soul. Now, with the second question of the strength of a relationship you have with a friend, my response would be, the years of childhood memories my best friend and I share speak to the length and the strength of our friendship. And for example number 3, if I had to imagine a concern that I might address with a team, I might say, in today's meeting, I'd like to speak to the lack of communication in making decisions that affect the whole team. And now it's your turn. Again, take some time to think through these scenarios, and when you're ready, share your examples with me. If you found today's lesson helpful to you, I would love to know, and you can tell me in one very simple way. Give this lesson a thumbs up here on YouTube, and while you're at it, make sure you subscribe as well so that you never miss one of my Confident English lessons. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.